So, for the last 72 hours, a whole section of the internet has been sitting inside the wreckage of a livestream that nobody was ever supposed to survive. And while y'all have already seen the clips, already seen the tears, already seen the pregnant girlfriend break down on camera in real time, most of you have brushed right past the one detail that quietly explains everything. The detail nobody's replaying. The detail Blueface is praying you don't notice. The detail that turns a scandal into a confession. Because here's the thing. When Chrisean Rock stood at the edge of that Los Angeles dock on July 20th, 2026, and let those tears roll down her face in front of the whole internet, she wasn't crying about a boat trip. She wasn't crying about a photo. She wasn't crying about a live stream comment. Chrisean was crying because in that exact second she finally understood something the rest of the internet was still catching up to. Blueface had spent a full 48 hours pretending she was the future, pretending the past was still alive, pretending the woman at home didn't exist. And in the very next breath, Blueface was about to walk off that dock and drive straight back into the arms of the woman who was carrying his second child. Listen, this is going to detonate before we're done, so stay with me. I'ma tell you exactly what happened, exactly what was said, exactly who was in the room, and exactly what Blueface admitted on camera 3 days after swearing he never would. Family, before we even unpack the boat, before we get to the hot tub, before we get to the moment Nevaeh Akira looked her man dead in his face and told him there was no reason to apologize if he meant to do it, y'all follow me on this one. This isn't a cheating story. This isn't a triangle. This isn't a, he said, she said. This is what happens when a man decides that two women, one baby on the way, one baby already here, one late ex-boyfriend still under active investigation, and thousands of strangers watching in real time, are all less important than his own reflection. And the seams of that lie, family, are splitting on live stream in front of the entire hip-hop internet. On camera. With timestamps. With receipts. With witnesses. Alright, for starters, let's rewind to July 17th. Just 3 days before that boat pushed away from that dock, Blueface sat down on camera with Nevaeh Akira, looked her dead in her face, and said something so specific it should be tattooed on a courtroom wall. He told her, and this is close to verbatim, that he wouldn't have made her his girlfriend if he was going to cheat on her. Let that sit for a second. Read it twice. He didn't say he loved her. He didn't say he was faithful. He didn't even promise. Blueface weaponized the relationship itself as evidence. The very act of calling Nevaeh his girlfriend, Blueface said out loud, on camera, was proof he would never betray her. That was the promise. 72 hours later, that same man was sitting shoulder to shoulder with his ex in a hot tub, slow dancing in a living room to memories he was supposed to have buried in 2024, and feeding the son he still refuses to publicly claim. And the tea, family, only gets warmer from here. Now let's talk about the weekend that unraveled the whole thing. Blueface and Chrisean Rock did not spend a quiet afternoon together. They did not have a co-parenting handoff. They did not run into each other at a party. They spent a full weekend. Not a coffee. Not a phone call. Not a drop-off. A full live-streamed weekend, broadcast frame by frame to thousands of viewers who watched every single second of it happen in real time. They sat in a hot tub together. Chrisean pulled up the receipts on their secret 2024 marriage, the one that happened while Blueface was locked up, the one that everybody was told to forget existed, the one that turned into a footnote after Nevaeh moved in. They slow danced in what looked like somebody's living room, holding each other close, moving side to side like two people with unfinished business that was never actually finished. Blueface fed their nearly 3-year-old son, Chrisean Jr., laughing on camera, playing father to the same child he has publicly, repeatedly, and cruelly denied belongs to him. The same child Blueface once alleged belonged to Chrisean's late ex-boyfriend, Ronnie Doe. And here's what makes that hit differently. Ronnie Doe was murdered in February 2025. That case is still open. That trauma is still fresh. That grief is still raw. And in the middle of Chrisean grieving the man Blueface tried to pin her son on, Blueface was in a hot tub with her, whispering things the camera couldn't quite catch, feeding the son he says isn't his, dancing with the woman he says he doesn't want. Listen. I said this was going to detonate. We're just getting to the fuse. Because while Blueface and Chrisean were laughing on that boat, while Blueface was feeding Chrisean Jr. and cracking jokes about the past, Nevaeh Akira was at home in the house they share. Pregnant. Carrying a whole human. Watching her man spend intimate hours with his ex on a public live stream. And here's what nobody's saying loud enough. That's not abstract pain. That's not hypothetical betrayal. That's not a rumor Nevaeh had to piece together after the fact. That is a man handing his pregnant girlfriend a photograph, pressing it into her chest, and telling her to keep looking at it. That is Blueface, fully aware, fully broadcasting, choosing to hurt Nevaeh on a stage designed for maximum humiliation, on a platform he owns, in front of an audience he built. The whisper going around is that this was never accidental. That every laugh in that hot tub was a message. That every slow dance with Chrisean was a text sent directly to Nevaeh's phone. That every second of the live stream was a knife with somebody's name carved into the handle. So let's rewind again, because the timeline is the crime scene. July 17th, Blueface promises Nevaeh he wouldn't have made her his girlfriend if he was going to cheat. July 19th, Blueface tells his followers he's stepping out for the weekend. July 20th, Blueface is in Los Angeles on a boat with Chrisean Rock, hot tub, dancing, unfinished business flowing between them in front of every camera pointed at that dock. July 21st, Blueface is back home, cameras rolling, and this is the exact moment the live stream cracks wide open. Because this is when Blueface admitted it. This is when Blueface stopped hiding. This is when Blueface, on his own broadcast, in his own words, walked straight into a confession he can never take back. He didn't say I'm sorry. He didn't say I messed up. He didn't say I got caught up. Blueface said, and I want you to hear this exactly, I cheated. Just that. 2 words. Flat. Factual. Emotionless. Like reporting the weather. Like Blueface was reading a stock ticker instead of confessing to the woman carrying his second child that he had spent the entire weekend inside another woman's world. No apology in the voice. No shame in the eyes. No pause between the thought and the sentence. Just 2 words dropped on a pregnant woman like a suitcase on a doorstep. And Nevaeh's response, family, cut deeper than any confession Blueface could have ever offered. Because Nevaeh didn't scream. Nevaeh didn't throw anything. Nevaeh didn't cuss him out. Nevaeh looked at Blueface, calm as an operating room, and said something quiet and surgical. She said there is no reason to say sorry if you had intentions on doing it. Read that again. She wasn't yelling about the cheating. She wasn't spiraling. Nevaeh was telling Blueface that an apology requires regret. And if you meant to do it, if you planned it, if you drove to that boat, if you stepped into that hot tub, if you slow danced with Chrisean knowing exactly what you were about to break, then you don't get to hand her the word sorry like it's a receipt. Nevaeh wasn't heartbroken in that second. Nevaeh was disappointed. And disappointment, family, is a deeper kind of wreckage. Heartbreak heals. Disappointment reorganizes how you see somebody forever. Blueface's response, and catch this because it tells you everything, was cold. Calculated. Defensive. Almost bureaucratic. He looked at Nevaeh and told her, quote, take my apology with honor. Take it with honor. Translation, shut up and accept it. Translation, we're moving on because I said we are. Translation, this is my apology, this is my volume, this is my timing, this is my terms, and you don't get to dictate what heals you. Translation, this is not a conversation. Translation, this is a press release. That is the kind of language a lawyer writes for a client who already knows the case is lost. That is not a man asking for forgiveness. That is a man serving a verdict. But the live stream didn't move on. Because in that exact same broadcast, in that exact same room, Blueface made a comment so coldly cruel it went viral on its own within minutes. Blueface looked at the woman carrying his child, in front of her own son, in front of thousands of viewers, and told her she has no potential. He told Nevaeh, verbatim, that all she knows how to do is a specific sexual act I'm not going to repeat on this channel. He said it out loud. He said it on camera. He said it while she was pregnant. And Nevaeh's son, Superior, was in the room. A child. A little boy. Sitting there. Hearing a grown man degrade his mother on a live stream that would be replayed on every gossip page from here to next Tuesday. That's not messy. That's not passionate. That's cruelty on broadcast delay. Listen. Nevaeh didn't cry in that moment. Nevaeh didn't crumble. Nevaeh went straight into protection mode. She looked at Blueface and told him to watch his mouth. She told him to shut that talk down. She told him to not say that in front of her son. She said, "Real, watch your mouth, especially in front of him, don't say that." Nevaeh wasn't arguing about the cheating in that second. Nevaeh wasn't defending her body. Nevaeh was standing between Superior and the version of a man Blueface had just decided to be on camera. That's a mother. That's a woman. That's the kind of composure people spend their whole lives trying to learn. That's the kind of moment that reveals a person's whole spine in 3 seconds. And Blueface's response? He told Nevaeh she was scaring him with her, quote, voodoo eyes. Voodoo eyes. He made her the villain of her own betrayal. He turned a pregnant woman defending her son into a live stream joke. He weaponized her frustration into content. And the chat ate it up. Because that's what the chat does. The chat doesn't care about Nevaeh. The chat doesn't care about Superior. The chat doesn't care about Chrisean. The chat cares about the next punchline. And Blueface fed the chat exactly what it wanted, because Blueface has been feeding that chat for years. Now let's go back to Chrisean, because the internet is talking about a lot of things right now, but nobody is talking about the exact moment Chrisean broke. And I need y'all to see this frame by frame. Chrisean Rock didn't cry when she was arguing with Blueface. Chrisean didn't cry in the hot tub. Chrisean didn't cry during the slow dance. Chrisean didn't cry when Blueface fed Chrisean Jr. and denied him in the same breath. Chrisean didn't cry when Blueface pulled up their old marriage. Chrisean didn't cry when Blueface joked with the chat about their history. Chrisean Rock cried at the goodbye. That's it. That's the moment. When Blueface prepared to leave that boat and drive back to Nevaeh, Chrisean Rock stood at the edge of the dock, tears streaming down her face, watching the man she once secretly married in prison walk into a car heading to another woman's living room. And that image, family, is the entire story right there. A woman who carried his child. A woman who wore his last name in secret. A woman who spent 48 hours being told she was still the one. Watching him leave. Again. On camera. For the internet to clip. For the algorithm to slice. For strangers to caption. The whisper going around is that Chrisean knew. That she always knew. That every second on that boat was borrowed time. That every slow dance was a farewell she wasn't ready to name. And that when the tears finally fell at that dock, they fell because Chrisean finally accepted the truth Blueface had been dressing up in slow dances for 48 hours. He wasn't coming back. Not permanently. Not this time. Not with Nevaeh pregnant. Not with the internet watching. Not with the cameras rolling. Not with the algorithm scoring every second. Chrisean cried because Chrisean is done borrowing time from a man who never planned to lend it. Here's what nobody's saying. When Blueface finally made it home to Nevaeh, y'all could see it on both their faces. Y'all could hear it in both their voices. And the thing that seemed to cut Nevaeh deepest wasn't the cheating. It wasn't the hot tub. It wasn't even the slow dance. It was that when Chrisean asked Blueface directly, on stream, in front of everybody, whether he was still in a relationship with Nevaeh, Blueface went silent. He didn't answer. He didn't defend Nevaeh. Blueface didn't even acknowledge that Nevaeh existed. And to Nevaeh, that silence was worse than any confession Blueface could have offered later. Because a confession, at least, is a sentence. Silence is an eraser. Nevaeh confronted Blueface about it in a way that felt like a legal deposition. She asked him why he didn't answer. She asked him why he didn't claim her. She told him, if you're claiming to be in a relationship with me, then claim me. Don't play games. Don't stay quiet when somebody asks you to name your commitment. Either you're all in, Nevaeh said, or you're all the way out. And Blueface's response was, and I'm not exaggerating, that Chrisean already knew the situation. Family. Nevaeh's clapback was sharper than a razor. She asked Blueface, then why didn't you make it clear? Why did you pretend to be confused? Why did you pretend to be unavailable to answer the simplest question a woman can ask a man? Why did you turn a yes or no question into a shrug? And Blueface had nothing. Because there is nothing. Because there is no answer that would survive the room. That right there is worse than the cheating. And I want y'all to sit with this. Because what Nevaeh exposed on that live stream wasn't just infidelity. Nevaeh exposed the hedging. The double booking. The refusal to commit to either woman in a way that would let her make an informed decision about her own life. Chrisean is out here believing there's still a version of Blueface who might come home. Nevaeh is out here believing there's a version of Blueface who's fully hers. And Blueface is out here letting both versions run at the same time, because letting both run means he never has to lose either. That is the real crime here. That is what makes this more than gossip. That is what turns a boat trip into a body of evidence. Alright, next chapter. Because y'all need to zoom all the way out. This story is not really about Blueface. It's not really about Chrisean Rock. It's not really about Nevaeh Akira. This story is about a man who is building a life with a pregnant woman while simultaneously maintaining an emotional, physical, and public relationship with the mother of a child he has spent 2 full years denying. And instead of choosing, instead of being honest, instead of letting anybody in his orbit make a real decision about their own future, Blueface is trying to keep both. On camera. In real time. For engagement. For the algorithm. For the follower count. For the chat. Because Blueface figured out a long time ago that chaos monetizes better than clarity. And every time the internet gasps, another zero gets added somewhere. Chrisean knows about Nevaeh. She's watching her ex spend weekends with his pregnant girlfriend on the same phone she's holding when he calls her. She's raising a nearly 3-year-old who asks about a father that publicly denies him. Chrisean is grieving Ronnie Doe. Chrisean is grieving a marriage that Blueface will not acknowledge in daylight. Chrisean is grieving a version of Blueface who might not exist anymore. Chrisean is grieving on live stream. And every tear becomes somebody's TikTok. Nevaeh knows about Chrisean. She's carrying life. She's watching a live stream turn her relationship into a public negotiation. She's hearing a man tell her she has no potential in front of her own son. Nevaeh is realizing, in real time, that the relationship she thought she was inside of is actually a stage. And the audience gets to vote on whether she stays. Nevaeh is not just fighting for her man. Nevaeh is fighting for her privacy, her dignity, her son, her unborn child, and her right to be seen as a full person instead of a live stream character. And the children, family. The children. Superior is in the room hearing grown men decide his mother's worth on a broadcast. Chrisean Jr. is nearly 3 years old and being fed by a man who denies his last name. Both boys are watching this. Both boys are absorbing this. Both boys will grow up with clips of this moment saved on somebody's phone forever. Both boys will one day type their own names into a search bar and see what Blueface said and did in the summer of 2026. That's not celebrity gossip. That's generational damage in real time. That's a scar being tattooed on kids who didn't sign the paperwork. Listen to me carefully. Here's the timeline, one more time, so nobody in the comments can argue what actually happened. July 17th, Blueface promises Nevaeh he wouldn't have made her his girlfriend if he was going to cheat on her. On camera. In her face. With intention. July 19th, Blueface signals he's stepping out for the weekend. Cryptic caption. Vague plans. July 20th, Blueface is in a hot tub in Los Angeles with Chrisean Rock. Slow dancing. Feeding Chrisean Jr. reminiscing about a secret 2024 marriage. On live stream. In broad daylight. For every camera to catch. July 21st, Blueface admits, on camera, that he cheated. Just like that. Flat and dry. No apology in the voice. July 22nd. Blueface is home. Deflecting. Joking about Nevaeh's eyes. Calling a pregnant woman scary. Telling her to take his apology with honor. Degrading her in front of her son. Then blaming her for being upset. Blueface even told Nevaeh he had no intentions of being with somebody else. Family. That is not an apology. That is a technicality. That is Blueface saying he slept with Chrisean but doesn't plan on building a life with her. As if the length of the betrayal matters. As if a pregnant woman is supposed to feel better because the affair was scheduled for a weekend instead of a lifetime. As if the timeline of infidelity is the measure of it. As if a single weekend betrayal costs less than a long one. As if pain has a warranty period. Here's what nobody's saying. Nevaeh is not just watching her boyfriend cheat. Nevaeh is watching Blueface renegotiate what her relationship even is, in real time, with an audience of thousands, without asking her permission to redraw the map. That is worse than cheating. That is a hostile takeover of somebody's life. That is a woman being told what she is instead of being asked what she wants. And it gets darker, y'all. Because there is an active investigation into Ronnie Doe's murder. There is unresolved trauma. There is a nearly 3-year-old whose paternity is being denied on a public feed. There is a pregnant woman being told on live stream that her only skill is a sexual act. There is a mother trying to shield her son from language a grown man refuses to filter. There is an ex-wife crying at a dock while her ex-husband drives to somebody else. This is not a story. This is a slow-motion collapse being broadcast frame by frame, and every platform involved is quietly grateful for the numbers. Now let's talk about why this went nuclear. Because the internet doesn't grip every scandal like this. Blueface has had scandals before. Chrisean has had scandals before. Nevaeh has had scandals before. But something specific happened this weekend. 5 things, actually. And I want you to catalog them. First. It was unfiltered. There was no PR team. No editing suite. No manager doing damage control. No lawyer in the room reviewing takes. This was raw live stream. Real time. Unpackaged. Y'all watched it happen the same second the people inside it were living it. That's rare. That's exactly why it hit. Because Blueface didn't get the chance to shape the narrative before the internet had already saved the receipts. Second. It was relatable. Not because most people are cheating on pregnant girlfriends on boats in Los Angeles. Family, come on. It was relatable because betrayal is universal. Because being lied to is universal. Because standing at a dock watching somebody drive away is universal. Because being silent when someone asks about your commitment is universal. The scale is different. The pain is the same. The tears at that dock could be anybody's tears. Third. It was hypocritical. And hypocrisy, family, is the fuel the internet burns hottest on. Blueface said one thing on July 17th and did the exact opposite on July 20th. The gap between his promise and his behavior was so wide that even his own fans couldn't reconcile it. There's no spin that closes that gap. There's no PR angle that survives the timestamps. Fourth. A child was involved. When Superior sat in that room and heard his mother degraded, something shifted in the entire audience. This stopped being entertainment. This stopped being drama. The protective instincts of the entire internet lit up at once. And that's when Blueface lost the room. Y'all can survive a lot on the internet, family. But you cannot survive a moment where a child gets caught in the crossfire. That is the one line Blueface should have known not to cross. Fifth. The emotional accuracy. Chrisean's tears were real. Nevaeh's frustration was real. Blueface's deflection was real. Y'all can smell a performance from 6 blocks away, and this was not a performance. This was 3 people bleeding on camera. And that's why we can't look away. Because authenticity, even ugly authenticity, is rarer than gold in a world of packaged personas. We watched 3 humans have the worst weekend of their lives, and every second of it felt undeniable. Here's the question nobody wants to ask. Why does admitting to cheating, degrading a pregnant girlfriend, and joking through it still translate into engagement? Why did Blueface pick up thousands of new followers off this? Why is the live stream still trending? Why is the algorithm rewarding the worst version of him? Family, because that's how the machine works. That's the actual crime here. The live stream numbers went up. The controversy generated attention. Blueface will be trending for 2 more days. And somewhere in a boardroom, a platform is doing the math on how much this weekend was worth. And that math, family, is the reason none of this stops. Because the machine doesn't care who bleeds. The machine only cares who clicks. Which brings us back to Chrisean one more time. Because I don't want y'all to forget her in the noise. I don't want Chrisean to become a footnote in Nevaeh's story. I don't want the tears at that dock to get flattened into a meme. Chrisean Rock is not a villain in this story. Chrisean is not the winner. Chrisean is not the side piece. Chrisean is not the other woman. Chrisean is a woman who carried a child, married a man in secret while he was locked up, buried an ex-boyfriend under still unsolved circumstances, and spent 48 hours believing, maybe hoping, maybe pretending, that the person she loved had finally chosen her. And then watched him leave. Again. Chrisean cried at that dock because she finally understood the game. And no amount of hot tub time was going to change what came next. Chrisean cried because Chrisean is tired. And you can hear that tiredness in every tear. Nevaeh is not a villain either. Nevaeh is a pregnant woman who was promised something specific on July 17th and watched that promise die in a live stream on July 20th. Nevaeh's clapbacks were sharp because they were true. Nevaeh's silence was heavier than her shouting. And when Nevaeh told Blueface there's no reason to apologize if you meant to do it, Nevaeh spoke a sentence that half the internet will be quoting in breakup posts for the next year. Nevaeh didn't just defend her relationship. Nevaeh handed the internet a slogan. The only villain here, family, is the man who set fire to 3 lives, streamed it, then asked us to take his apology with honor. Blueface didn't relapse. Blueface didn't slip. Blueface didn't make a mistake. Blueface made a series of deliberate decisions, over 72 hours, in front of cameras he controlled, on platforms he monetizes, in living rooms he chose. And every one of those decisions was designed to hurt somebody specific. That is not a scandal. That is a pattern. That is not a bad weekend. That is a business model. And listen, I already know somebody in the comments is going to say Chrisean shouldn't have been on that boat. Somebody's going to say Nevaeh should have left before the baby. Somebody's going to say all 3 of them are messy and this is what happens when you build a relationship on live stream. And to a point, y'all are not entirely wrong. Messy participates in messy. Live stream lifestyles come with live stream consequences. That's real. That's fair. That's honest. But here's what I want everybody to hold on to tight. There is a difference between messy and cruel. There is a difference between complicated and calculated. There is a difference between a mistake and a strategy. And what Blueface did between July 17th and July 22nd, family, was not messy. It was cruel. It was calculated. It was rehearsed in his head before he ever stepped on that boat. And it was broadcast on purpose. Let's talk about the silence one more time. Because that silence, family, is the whole verdict. When Chrisean looked at Blueface on that boat and asked him if he was still in a relationship with Nevaeh, Blueface had a choice. Answer yes and honor his commitment. Answer no and free Nevaeh from a lie. Answer honestly and give both women the dignity of the truth. Blueface picked door number 3, and door number 3 was silence. That silence was not confusion. That silence was strategy. That silence was Blueface refusing to close a door he wanted left open. That silence was Blueface telling Chrisean, without words, that maybe there was still room. That silence was Blueface telling Nevaeh, without words, that she was disposable. And Nevaeh heard every syllable of that silence. Here's another moment nobody's replaying. When Blueface fed Chrisean Jr. on that live stream, he was feeding a child he has spent 2 years denying in public. He has taken to comment sections, podcasts, tabloids, and his own broadcasts to say Chrisean Jr. is not his son. That the paternity is questionable. That the child looks like somebody else. That the timeline doesn't line up. He has said all of that. On record. In print. On tape. And then, on July 20th, in front of thousands, Blueface picked up a spoon and fed that little boy like a father. Like a proud father. Like a father who was home. Like the last 2 years never happened. Family, that contradiction is a whole psychological study. Blueface will deny Chrisean Jr. on Monday and feed him on Sunday, because the truth is negotiable when the cameras are rolling. That child, at not even 3 years old, has already learned that his father shows up when the algorithm rewards it and disappears when it doesn't. Now let's talk about Nevaeh's baby for a second. Because there's a whole human growing right now that nobody is protecting. That baby is going to be born into a family already fractured on the internet. That baby is going to have a birth announcement dissected by strangers. That baby is going to have a name debated in comment sections. That baby is going to be compared, contrasted, and clout-checked against Chrisean Jr. before the umbilical cord is even cut. And Blueface, the same man who cannot commit to a yes or no question about his relationship, is going to be that child's father on paper. That baby didn't sign up for any of this. And yet the receipts of every livestream Blueface ever did are the archive that baby will inherit. Chrisean Jr. and Blueface's unborn child with Nevaeh are going to grow up in the same universe. They are going to see each other in family court documents, in shared TikTok compilations, in old livestream clips that will follow them around like a second shadow. And here's the part that makes me quiet. Neither one of those boys asked to be born into a livestream. Neither one of those boys asked to have their father broadcast his worst decisions. Neither one of those boys asked to be footnotes in a scandal. But that's what Blueface built. Not a family. A content ecosystem with children inside it. Here's another whisper going around the timeline, family, and I want to name it because it matters. Some people online are saying that this whole weekend was orchestrated. That the boat wasn't a coincidence. That Blueface knew exactly what he was doing when he told Nevaeh on July 17th that he wouldn't cheat, because he was already planning the boat for July 20th. That the promise was a decoy. That the confession was the point. That Blueface wanted Nevaeh to see the timeline stacked like this, so the humiliation would be architectural. I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying that's what the internet is starting to suspect. And when the internet starts stacking a timeline like that, it usually stacks it because the receipts already point that way. Let me tell y'all what's really scary. Blueface is not learning. That's the part nobody wants to say out loud. There is no arc here. There is no growth. There is no man on the other side of this weekend saying, y'all, I've hit my bottom and I need to change. Blueface came out of this weekend louder, cruder, and more comfortable in the wreckage than he went in. That is not the behavior of a man in crisis. That is the behavior of a man in his zone. A man who has figured out that his worst self performs the best numerically. A man who has priced out his own decency and decided it's not worth what the algorithm pays. And that, family, is the horror underneath the scandal. Nevaeh's next move is going to define the next 2 years of her life. If Nevaeh stays, the internet will interpret the pregnancy as the reason. If Nevaeh leaves, the internet will interpret her exit as strength. Either choice will be dissected in 50 different ways. Either choice will be turned into a life lesson strangers will project onto their own relationships. But here's what I want y'all to remember. Nevaeh does not owe the internet a choice. Nevaeh does not owe any of us a plotline. Nevaeh is a pregnant woman who is trying to think, feel, protect, and decide, all while thousands of strangers refresh her page for updates. Give her the room. Give her the grace. Give her the silence Blueface refused to give her. Chrisean's next move matters too. Chrisean has been in and out of this dynamic for years. Chrisean has cried on more live streams than most people have watched. Chrisean has been the punchline, the protagonist, the punching bag, and the poet, sometimes in the same 24 hours. And now Chrisean is standing at a dock, watching a man drive away, holding a nearly 3-year-old and a set of feelings she has never been given permission to sort out privately. What Chrisean does next will not be tidy. It will not be scripted. It will not be perfect. But whatever it is, it deserves to happen off camera. It deserves to happen without an audience. Chrisean has earned the right to grieve in private, whether the internet grants her that right or not. So where does this leave us? Chrisean Rock is at home with a nearly 3-year-old who deserves to know his father. Nevaeh Akira is pregnant, carrying life, and re-evaluating the man she thought she was building it with. Superior is in a house where a grown man told his mother she has no potential, and that will echo for years. Chrisean Jr. is being denied by a father who fed him on camera 2 nights ago. And Blueface is scrolling his follower count, telling himself that this weekend was worth every second of the noise. Family, the seams are splitting. The wallpaper is peeling. The boat has already left the dock. And the live stream, y'all, is still running. Here's my last question for y'all, and I want you to load up the comments with your verdict. Was Chrisean the villain, the victim, or the one who finally saw the truth at that dock? Was Nevaeh naive, was she strong, or was she the only adult on that entire live stream? And is Blueface a man in crisis, a man in control, or a man who has finally run out of second chances? Was that hot tub a relapse or a rehearsal? Was that apology real or was it inventory? Was that silence about Nevaeh a mistake or a message? Drop those thoughts below. Argue in the replies. Tag the people you know are watching. Because next week, family, I'm going to break down exactly what Nevaeh said off camera after the live stream ended, exactly what Chrisean did the morning after that boat pulled away, and exactly what Blueface texted before the whole timeline collapsed. And that clip, family, is going to change everything. Before we close this out, I want to say one more thing about the audience. Because y'all are part of this story too. Every live stream that trends is a live stream that got fed. Every comment section that fills up is a comment section that told a platform to keep serving the wreckage. Every clip that gets replayed is a clip that told an algorithm to promote pain. I am not saying don't watch. I am not saying don't talk. I am saying watch honestly. Talk honestly. Know that the same machine that made Blueface famous is the same machine that is now profiting off Nevaeh's tears and Chrisean's silence. And if we don't at least name that, then we're just another line item on somebody's revenue report. And here's my final thought, family, because this one won't leave me alone. There is a version of this weekend that could have gone differently. Blueface could have stayed home on July 20th, Blueface could have kept his July 17th promise. Blueface could have answered honestly when Chrisean asked. Blueface could have apologized like a man instead of issuing a press statement. Blueface could have shielded Superior from that language. Blueface could have claimed Chrisean Jr. quietly, off camera, like a father instead of like a content pivot. There were exits everywhere. Blueface chose none of them. And now 3 homes, 4 children counting the unborn baby, and 1 open homicide case are all sitting under the weight of decisions one man made for engagement. Until then, keep your eyes open, keep your receipts closer, and remember what Nevaeh said. There is no reason to apologize if you meant to do it. That sentence, family, is the whole summer of 2026 in 15 words. Play it back. Screenshot it. Send it to whoever needs it. And I'll see y'all in the next one.